Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're going to absolutely shatter an illusion that's probably sitting right there in your modern enterprise environment. We're exposing a critical and honestly kind of terrifying operational blind spot in how conditional access live checks, or actually scratch that, how it doesn't live check device compliance. We're going to show you a gap that could literally be leaving your network wide open.
It really all boils down to one ultimate question. When was that compliance check actually last true? You know, your cloud dashboard might show a device as totally compliant, right? Green check marks everywhere. It looks like your ZeroTrust architecture is just purring along perfectly. But here's the catch. Neither of those screens is telling you the actual age of that critical security signal. So in this explainer, we're going to completely deconstruct this compliance gap. We'll walk through the exact technical mechanisms under the hood, and I'll give you the PowerShell remediation steps you need to actually secure your tenant.
Here's how we're breaking it down today. First, the ZeroTrust illusion. Then, the 30-day blind spot. After that, cross-referencing the truth, fixing the compliance gap, and finally, proof in the trends. All right, let's jump right in.
Part 1. The ZeroTrust illusion. Okay, let's start by looking at what actually happens under the hood when your policy demands a compliant device before it hands out an access token. The require compliant device control, it doesn't actually interrogate the device at the exact moment of sign-in, not at all. Instead, it's just reading a static stored flag, a flag that was written by Intune to the EntraID device record during the last successful check-in. So it's a look backward, not a live security check.
And there's a really stark contrast between Microsoft EntraID and Intune here. Think of it like a giant game of telephone. On one side, you've got the EntraID device object, which just checks that stored Boolean flag, the one called isCompliant. But on the flip side, the Intune-managed device record tracks the actual last sync date time. If that check-in happened, say, 3 weeks ago, maybe the device went offline, went to sleep, or just quietly broke its sync connection, well, that EntraID flag still happily says compliant. And conditional access? It's just going to blindly trust it.
Which brings us to Part 2, the 30-day blind spot.
Now, to really understand how a device can go completely dark for weeks, but still breeze right through your strictest security checks, we need to look at how sync intervals and tenant timeouts stack up. Devices don't just check in continuously, right? A healthy online Windows endpoint does a steady-state maintenance sync roughly every 8 hours. And hey, that's great for active laptops. But what about a device that's asleep in a backpack, or off the corporate network, or suffering from a silently broken enrollment? Those devices can go much, much longer without anyone or any automated system even batting an eye.
And that leads us to this honestly massive number, 30. By default, Intune gives silent devices a 30-day compliance status validity period. It will literally sit there and wait a full 30 days before finally throwing its hands up and marking the device as non-compliant. Until that timer hits 0, whatever that device last reported, that's what stands.
But here is the absolutely crucial point. That 30-day default is a user experience accommodation. It is not a security trust boundary. This super generous window was built to stop users who are on PTO or laptops sitting forgotten in a desk drawer from getting unfairly blocked. But relying on it for security, that creates a massive, gaping hole between what your admin portal is reporting and the actual boots-on-the-ground reality of that device.
Let's move to Part 3, cross-referencing the truth.
Fixing this whole mess has to start with measurement. We need to pull data from two completely different Microsoft Graph objects that, frankly, aren't naturally compared to one another in the native web portals. First up, we've got isCompliant. That's the read-only Boolean flag in EntraID that conditional access actually looks at and trusts. Then we have last sync date time living over in the Intune-managed device record. That one tells us the exact date and time the device actually successfully synced, so by matching the EntraID compliance flag with the Intune last sync time, we suddenly discover exactly how long ago that compliant claim was actually true.
So here's the exact logic you'll want for your PowerShell audit. First, you query EntraID for devices where isCompliant is set to true. Then you query Intune using the Azure AD device ID to grab that last sync date time. And finally, you just compare the current date against that sync timestamp. Running this cross-reference across every single device your conditional access policies currently trust, well, it's going to generate a pretty revealing list for you. But instead of just a binary compliant or not, this list is ranked by signal staleness. You're actively hunting for that gap.
Part 4. Fixing the compliance gap. All right, now that we can actually see the gap, let's talk about fixing it. You can't change the underlying architecture of how conditional access reads that stored flag. That's hard-coded by Microsoft's design. But you absolutely can change how you operationally manage the whole setup. There are 3 concrete moves you can make today to stop treating compliance as a simple yes or no state and start treating it as the time-sensitive signal it really is. Step 1, tighten that validity period. Step 2, run the staleness audit on a regular schedule. And Step 3, actually fix the underlying sync issues for those stale devices.
Let's zoom in on Step 1. Lowering the validity period immediately shortens the maximum window that a silent device can hold on to a stale compliant result. You can dive right into Intune and drop this setting from 30 days down to a number that actually matches your organization's real risk tolerance. Maybe that's 7 days, maybe it's less. Just remember to pair this change with solid user communication. You want them to know they need to connect and sync rather than just slamming them into a silent access block with zero explanation.
Then we get to Step 3, fixing the sync itself. Look, when you find devices that are stale, they almost always have a local enrollment or connectivity problem. It's rarely a policy issue in the cloud. You're going to want to use these specific event viewer IDs to diagnose the local MDM enrollment or network issues that are blocking communication with Intune. For example, event ID 76 flags that auto MDM enrollment just flat out failed, while 7016 tells you a scheduled task couldn't even start. The real takeaway here? Fix the actual sync, don't just reset the flag.
Finally, Part 5, Proof in the Trends.
Running this audit once is fantastic, but the real measure of success is tracking it over time. We want to transform a static, hidden security gap into a highly actionable operational metric. Basically, you want to track the median age of that sync time across your entire fleet. A truly healthy fleet, it shows a very tight, low median sync age that sits comfortably inside that standard 8-hour check-in cadence. If you start seeing your median sync age creeping upward across the board, you know you've probably got a broader connectivity, certificate, or autopilot issue blowing up, rather than just a few unlucky laptops left in the trunk of a car.
And the real-world script results tell the whole story. In our baseline audit, we identified 17 devices that were fully trusted by conditional access, but were running on dangerously stale signals. Just 2 weeks later, after consistently fixing those broken enrollments and proactively retiring unused devices, that number plummeted down to just 2. It's undeniable proof that actively managing this gap works. You can rapidly drop the number of devices your environment trusts with outdated signals.
So, I'm going to leave you with this one thought to ponder. How old is the oldest compliance signal in your tenant today? Think about it. Ultimately, the dashboard only tells you if a device was compliant at some arbitrary point in the past. But the number that actually matters for a true zero-trust architecture, that's how long ago it was true. You got to measure it, manage it, and close the gap. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and remember, keep verifying those signals.